we were there. We were there until we were in the office all day, and then we went to the reception to see everybody. And it was perfect for us because we had our offices right there at the Ambassador. I was tired, and I went home at about 9 or 10 o'clock. And Joe was still there, but he just called me and said, "Okay, I think I'm going to leave. I've had enough." And he gets in the car to come home. We didn't have a phone in the car then, but he left, and Bobby Kennedy walked out after him. So he didn't know until he had turned on the radio, and that's how he heard about it. Oh. And he died pretty soon after that. I think he could have been incredible, but he was so young when he died.
Lee and Joe Cerrell were the original power couple of California politics. They started out working for the Democratic Party, helping elect Pat Brown as California governor and John F. Kennedy as President of the United States. Together they formed the leading West Coast political consultancy and public relations firm Cerrell Associates that still thrives today. Neither Lee nor Joe were born in California. Joe was raised in Jamaica, Queens, where he was a champion dog handler. He was forced to come to Los Angeles when he was 17 to help his asthma. Lee was born in Oklahoma and grew up in Arizona. She first came west to Pasadena for college. Lee and Joe met and could not stop talking and kept up the conversation for well over 40 years. They shared everything, the highs and the lows, the wins and the losses, and they shared a sense of adventure and fun.
This was our philosophy. If you're having a party, then invite everybody. We had a Christmas party every year. It was famous because we did somewhere downstairs, we did, the invitations were always unique and many very funny. And everybody wanted to come. And I told Joe, this is like a New York party. It's turned into a New York party. In a New York party, everyone in the world is there, and they're all up so tight and close to each other that people would come in and they would write notes to me and say, "At the party, I was pushed right up against the governor, and so I just talked to him for 10 minutes." It was like that. My mother used to tell me the things she said that I was very difficult because I always ran away as soon as I could walk. If she couldn't let me play out in the yard.
Lee always had her own ideas, and that included her name.
I was born in Durant, Oklahoma, and I was named, my mother named me after her uncles, Willie, Francis, Hope.
What did you think of that name?
I didn't like it very much, especially because after we moved from in Oklahoma, we went to Arizona, and they were not the same kind of people, and so they thought those were funny names.
Growing up, Lee had two passions, roller skating and reading, both of which betrayed a need to escape and travel.
Well, my mother was a reader too, and she used to take me, we would get on the bus and go out to the library, and she had a library card, and I was too young to have one. But she took every time, I think could take 7 books. And so she would get like 2 or 3 for her, and the rest of them she would get books for me. And then when I got, I think must have been 8, I got my own library card, and we still went on the bus, and I checked out as many books as I could check out. I read at night, pulling up the quilt over my head and making them think that I was already in bed. I love to read.
The 1930s were tough for many families, and the Hopes moved to Arizona in 1938, hoping for better work. Cotton picking was one job they all did.
My parents went all the time, but it's pretty hard. You had to be 12 to be able to do it. So my mother made a cotton thing for me, and I went out, and it's the hardest thing I think I ever did, and I was so excited to do it because I was going to make money, and I think I got like $4 or $5. I was very excited, but my mother and father got like $15 and my dad got $20. I didn't even know we were poor, but because we never missed a meal. Always, we were fine. We walked to school, and it was about a mile. When my friends and I, we went a different way home, and because we stopped at this little stand, and they all got an ice cream cone, and I got a dill pickle. I love dill pickles, I still do.
So as a kid, you preferred dill pickles over ice cream?
Right. And this would be like, 100 degrees, and everybody would say, "Why don't you get the ice cream?" I said, "Oh, but I never get a chance to get the dill pickle, and only when we're walking home here."
It was an unusual family. Lee's brother Milton was 11 years older. Her sister Lorena was 13 years older. Lee also had a younger brother Edward, but it is the war years and Milton's service that Lee remembers best.
He went into the 101st Air Force, which is jumping out of an airplane, which was scary for me, but because I loved him, he was 11 or 12 years older than me. So when he came home, he was so good looking and everything. Because it was a horrible time. So many people got killed, but they were so brave. They were so brave.
So Milton was parachuted then down onto the beaches in France. You think he was right there?
They came in from behind. They came in from the boats, and then they dropped people behind to meet, and then they came to meet each other. Yeah.
So he's a paratrooper.
And right.
Lee remembers the end of World War II.
I was so excited. We had a chinaberry tree in front of our house, and I was definitely I climbed every tree I could find. And so I went out, and this was on Roosevelt Street, which had a pretty good group of people. And I went out, I climbed up, and then I yelled at all the cars and yelled them, "The war is over! The war is over!"
Things picked up for the family. Her father had a steady job, and Lee started at Phoenix Union High School. There, Lee learned 3 things. She made friends easily. She loved words and English, and like her dad, she had a superb memory.
We would get a timed reading. You know, you read a page in a certain time, as fast as you can read it, and then he gives you the questions about what you read. And oh, I loved it because I could do it so easy. I think I was a good memorizer. Anymore I can't remember anything, but I could think back, and I could actually see the reading. I could see the questions that they asked. I would like think back, and I could see the answer right then. Sharon sent a letter to me. Please come and visit. Everybody else's parents came to visit them. Oh God. There were problems when both of you were working at the same place, and everything is so busy that even you couldn't go to your daughter's camp. I need another care package because ants got in my Tic Tacs candy corn and my cheese and crackers right back. That is a good one.
Lee, what did you do after you graduated from high school in 1950?
I wanted to go to our church school, which was in Pasadena, and I applied, and then I knew some people who were going to go, so I would have a place, I'd have a way to go, and I went, and I thought that I would get a really good job or something because it was in Los Angeles, but I couldn't make enough money to pay the tuition and to pay for my house, you know.
Lee was forced to return to Phoenix, where she got a job with the phone company. Laid off, she decided to return to Los Angeles and reconnect with the Nazarene Church.
And people were very, very kind and very nice, helped me get a job, helped me find a place to stay and everything. And so I stayed. But then I thought I might as well keep working and make more money.
It was an important decision because soon after, Lee met Bob Bullock from the Nazarene Church Choir, and they would marry and have Steve. But before Steve arrived, Bob joined the Air Force and they moved to Mississippi, where Lee got a job with J.C. Penney.
And outside the J.C. Penney stores, they had a fountain, and I had a black friend, and I said, let's go get a drink. And she said, oh, I have to go around here. Oh my God, I can't tell you how it made me feel. She's a human. So I didn't like Mississippi very well.
They moved to Las Vegas. Bob had been transferred to the Nellis Air Force Base and Steve was born there.
We lived in Las Vegas for the rest of his time, so that was, I think it was probably about 2.5 years or something like that. And then we moved back to LA, and we bought a house out in El Monte, and this was where I met this friend who was into the political thing.
The marriage did not last, and Lee took a job with United Airlines, based in downtown LA. One of the perks was free travel.
They gave me a 3-day, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They would give me a ticket, a round-trip ticket, anywhere that United flew.
It was on a trip to San Francisco that Lee met up with some important Democrats.
Are you Lee? I said, yes. And she said, oh, come on, we're having a drink. I said, of course, in San Francisco, it's 5 o'clock, you have to drink. And the whole group took me out to dinner that night. I said I like Chinese, and I told them something in LA, and they all say, oh God, that's awful. You have to come to San Francisco for Chinese food. And I had a wonderful evening. The next evening, they took me to some other restaurant, and the secretary met me for breakfast on Sunday morning. You know, so I had no plans. I guess I would have just stayed at the hotel. But these people were so incredibly nice to me. This is George Moscone, mayor of San Francisco, and he was in the state legislature also. The most good-looking man. Is that good-looking man? He came to my house because he liked the food. He was a very, very dear friend. And he was a San Francisco. You know, San Francisco and Los Angeles are not terribly with each other. After I had got this great job at United Airlines, and I was doing just fine, but then the political people said, would you come and work in a campaign for the school board in Los Angeles? And we were the Democratic people. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't work with you, United Airlines anymore. They said, you will never get another job here. And I said, I probably won't, but this is what I want to do. And so I started working there, and Democratic headquarters was like one business before the headquarters that we had for this school board thing. And this guy came over, and because he was working for the party, and they were very interested in having these people have a good campaign. And he stood in front of my desk and talked a lot, and everything. And after he left, I tried to type, and I said, what happened? My typewriter is not even working. So we called the guy out, and the guy said, well, what's wrong is every button that could be pushed has been pushed. If it could be pulled, it was pulled. It was turned, or what? What did you do? And I said, that guy stood in front of my desk, and that's what he was doing, all that.
And who was that guy?
Joe. Joe Cerrell. Everybody loved Joe. Joe was, no one else knew how, he was like the most outgoing person, but we would go to some new people or something, new group of people, and I can remember he'd get out of the car and he would go, okay, I can do it, let's go. But he was sort of a shy person, but he pushed himself to not be that.
Joe Cerrell was a political prodigy. While other New York kids played marbles in grade school, Joe was organizing school elections.
The way he got to here was he had asthma so bad in New York that the doctor said, you got to move. You got to move with him. And his dad was a fireman in New York. He couldn't move, but eventually they did. He went out on I think he got into a fire or something, And then they moved out here after Joe did.
Joe went on to USC and founded its first Democrat club. Speakers could be hard to come by for what was, at first, a small club, so Joe was forced to settle for a relatively unknown senator from Massachusetts.
Kennedy came to USC and spoke. And I said, Joe, how many people did you have? He said, actually, he did. He thought they maybe had 100. But this is like several years before we all knew who he was.
On another occasion at USC, Joe led a walkout on right-wing Texas Democrat Governor Price Daniel.
They invited a governor from Texas. It's a different kind of Democrat if you're in Texas or the South. But this guy was very well known, everything. And Joe, he stood up, and all of his people stood up, and they walked out. He got in a lot of trouble for that.
After USC, it wasn't long before Joe was in the thick of statewide political campaigns for the California Democratic Party. Joe helped advance the career of his mentor, Jesse Unruh, helping him get elected to the state assembly in 1954. Unruh would go on to be Speaker of the State Assembly. After that, in 1958, he helped Pat Brown get elected governor. Joe was rewarded for this work by being appointed Executive Director of the California Democrats at the age of 24. Joe just loved to organize, and he loved to help people.
I never even knew all the people he helped do things. I'd get the mail, open the mail, and it would be somebody up in Northern California. She writes and says, Joe, I appreciate so much having you do something. It was something with a family thing, and that he took care of it. And I said, do you do this often? But then I found out he did. He never forgot a question that somebody would say, can you find out anything about this or about that? Who are those people? After the dinner, Governor Brown, Assemblyman Al Song, and Ed Roybal chat about state and federal matters. Surprised person in the back is unknown. That's why Joe cut that. I'll bet you that one of them sent this to him. I don't think I've ever seen it. We went into Hollywood, and Sinatra used to have a restaurant there, and he knew a lot of the Sinatra people because they were very active in the Democratic Party. And so we went in there, and it was really, we just talk. Oh, and then we saw each other every day because he was one door away. So we started having dinner every night, and that's it.
Joe and Lee dated and worked side by side at the Democratic headquarters for over 4 years, including a period where Lee worked in Sacramento for Governor Pat Brown. Joe's friends knew that Lee was the one.
I'm standing in the White House, and everybody's so totally dressed completely fantastic. And he comes in to the cocktail party, and I see him come in, and it's like, oh my God, this is the President of the United States, the whole world. And I just felt so that I couldn't talk to him. But he's across the way coming in the door, and I'm standing across the room with some other people, and he comes over and he says, "Did he marry you yet?" And I was like, I could not even say anything. I couldn't even say anything.
Joe would get around to proposing to Lee, but it took more than an executive order from JFK. It needed an ultimatum from Lee.
It was the first day of August, and I said, "Listen, we're either going to get married, or I'm gonna look around for somebody else. I'm growing old." And so he's laughing and everything. "Yeah, right, okay." And on the last day of August, he said, "Come on, let's go have dinner." And he's acting like, and he could tell, he was laughing at me really, because I said, "Okay, where? Someplace really good." And then we drove home to my house, and I got out of the door, slammed the door, and said goodbye. And I walk in, and he's laughing, and he takes his briefcase, and he comes out after me, and I thought about locking the door, but I didn't. But you know, and I said to him, "Why don't you just go home? I don't." He said, "No, I have to talk to you for a minute. Can you come here and sit on the sofa? Come on." And so I sit down on the sofa. He gets down on his knee and says, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "No, this is the last day, and you have made it. What is wrong with you?" He opens his briefcase, and he has the June section of the LA Times, which always gives the June marriages and where you should go and what's the rules and all of this. So that made me even more furious. So in June, he was thinking of it, but he never mentioned it. We had many, many, many parties. LA was perfect because we had movie stars and very important people, and people that they would know the name, and they would say, "Oh, yes, I'll give 500 because I want to see that house." You know? And we definitely played on that. Every director in Hollywood, we used to do something in their house because somebody wanted to make an impression on him. We were doing fundraising. Sinatra was very gung-ho for Kennedy. And I had met Sinatra by then. I'm in heaven, you know. We went over, I said we wanted to have some pizza or something, and Sinatra said, "Oh, go to my house. Go to my house. Go to my house. I'm leaving now. Get whatever you want. There's lots of pizza in my house." And so we took it up on it. All of the people who were down there, we went over to his house, and we saw this little tiny bathing suit out on the thing, and it must have been the child that he married. and we go into his kitchen, and I don't really see a freezer or anything, but I did see a double-doored thing that opened like this, and it was like a 8 by 10 freezer. And inside of the freezer, there were pizzas stacked, unbelievable, from some guy, a friend of his, back east. So we had pizzas. And now, what, you think this is not a pretty exotic life? I go from, I don't even know who my next door neighbor is, and now I'm doing all of this.
Joe and Lee were especially fond of Jack Kennedy, and he of them.
There was nobody like him. And he came out here, and he was like, he said, Joe, I got to go to the Catholic church. I got to go. They know I'm here, so I got to go to the Catholic Mass. And so take me by. There's a one in Beverly Hills. And Joe says he goes in, and he doesn't know him too well by now, but they sit down, and they sent the collection plate around, and he says, Joe, I got some, give me some money. And he said, I don't travel with money. I guess he's so rich. And Joe says, he's thinking, oh, okay, wonder if how will I ever get it back if he doesn't travel with money. And so he takes out a $5. The president said, $5? No, Joe, don't you have a 20? And he said, I had my 20, which I kept in my wallet, for emergencies. And I took it out and I gave it to him. And then I knew that's who I was for president.
Joe worked his magic in California and helped Kennedy take the White House. It was up to Lee to organize the ticker tape parade.
I had never seen a parade downtown. The people back there were telling me, you got to have confetti, and you got to have streamers and things like that. So I go in the phone book and I find somebody who says confetti, and I go down and I see him, and I said, I need to have some confetti. We're going to have a ticker tape parade down here. And the guy, he says, how much do you want? And I'm like, how much do I want? So I look at that and I say, that's not enough. That looks like give me 2 of those. Oh, even the mayor said, who the hell put all that paper out? In fact, near the end of the parade, as the car is going out, it's heated up so much that they have a little fire started under the car. And I'm telling Joe, don't tell anybody that I did the confetti. Joseph Cerrell, veteran campaign consultant and good friend of George Putnam, which that's a joke, has announced his candidacy for President of the United States. It is clear that the undecided vote has yet to make up its mind, Cerrell stated at a radio interview on KIEV late today. Really big one. They need an alternative, Joe said. It all happens so fast, said the candidate's wife, Lee. I hope the children will understand.
Cerrell Associates started life as a Golden State consultancy in 1966 and became Cerrell Associates in 1967. Early clients included Pacific Southwest Airlines, Pacific Telephone, as well as political campaigns and judicial elections. Lee and Joe remained passionate about the work.
I was mad, and it was something about the company. And he's yelling at me, and he has the door open and everybody there. Of course, they all know that. They don't even think that's unusual. And I stomp out of the room and go, and I took the office the farthest away from him, so and I go down and we've both been screaming at each other. and I am really mad. And phone rang, and he said, listen, we're all going down to some restaurant today because I wanted to try that. I said, do you know that I hate you? What did you I just left your office. But this is how he was. He'd say, oh, don't worry about that. Come on, let's go to lunch.
In 1983, they opened an office in Washington, D.C. with Ben Palumbo. But behind this success and expansion, there had been some tight corners in the early days.
I took care of the money, right? Joe used to say, never missed a payroll. So after he did that for about a year, I went sitting at the house sometime. I said, you're a little weird about this never missed a payroll, because there are a couple people who have missed a lot of payrolls. You and me. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, if I don't have enough money to pay everybody else in the company, then I don't pay us. He said, are you crazy? You're supposed to pay us first. No, you're not. You got to take care of your people first.
The kids grew up right along with the business, and in the business too.
When Sharon started doing things, her punishment was she could not go home, even though there was somebody there that would take care of her. But she had so many hours that she had earned in the past month that she would have to come and stay for 5 and 6 hours so that she could get rid of all those, the hours that we had given her. And then Joe and I did decide to quit giving her hours. We would punish her in other ways. We would take things away from her so that we didn't want her over there all the time. Now there's Joe. Veteran campaign manager talks on ethics of political contributors. I got several little nasty little notes at the office about this one. Really? Really? On ethics?
Lee and Joe and Cerrell Associates have worked at the highest level of politics for decades. There is hardly a bold-faced name in Democrat politics they have not met and helped. For Lee, no one could take the place of George Moscone and Hubert Humphrey.
Hubert Humphrey was the nicest, really everything he said he meant. Joe got acquainted with this woman who had on Sunset Boulevard, she had a strip joint, but it was a very fancy one, and he went there. He'd take all the guys who, if they came out, and they would go up there, and I got acquainted with her, and I went there, and Hubert Humphrey came out. And he said, no, I want to go to this place that I'm hearing about. And he went down. The people that he picked, though, he didn't do the strip people, got acquainted with them. He got acquainted with all the young ladies who were serving, the waitresses. And we had a major meeting the next morning at the Ambassador Hotel, but unknown to us, he has invited all the ladies. That was the worst. And Joe said, I'll go down. There's Hubert, and we took them to Disneyland. Hubert wanted to go to Disneyland, and Joe said, we will not be taking him to Disneyland unless we have a kid there. and I have 2 of them. So, and he carried him, he carried Joey, he carried both of them. You know, everybody knew him, and the crowd was unbelievable. All I wanted to do was go sit down somewhere. I didn't know how Hubert could have been running around so much. And they got their names in it too, that's nice. Joe and I once sat down. He said, come sit down. It was some night. He said, sit. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We are going to say, you're going to write it now, but we're going to try to remember all the people that we have worked for all these years. But what I want to do is, I want to see the presidents, the vice presidents, the governors, and the royalty.
How long was that list that you and Joe wrote out?
I think we had we had a little under 50.
Joe died in 2010, but lived long enough to welcome all 7 of his grandchildren. And the firm that Lee and Joe created will soon enter its 6th decade, with Steve overseeing things as CFO. Despite a life in state and national politics, and despite all those presidents and governors and kings and queens, Lee always valued one thing above all.
I have no disappointments or anything. My family was so incredible, and they all taught each other and learned from each other, and Joe was like, we were a perfect family, I think. Yes, we did yell at each other and stuff sometimes, but never in true anger or anything, like, I'm going to leave you. It never occurred to me. My was the most important thing in my life. I leave 3 children and 7 grandchildren. Every one of them is so dear and so making my life better. They come and see me, even to the youngest ones now. They're the fulfillment of my life.